Down by 20 points. On the road, with their season hanging by a thread, the Knicks looked finished. But in the most crucial moment of their playoff run, one subtle adjustment flipped everything. Not a trade, not a miracle shot. Just a single, strategic decision that turned the tide of the game and maybe the season. What changed wasn't flashy, and at first it didn't even seem intentional. But when the dust settled, it became clear. This one fix didn't just save Game 3, it may have saved the Knicks' shot at a championship. The collapse before the comeback. The Knicks entered Game 3 with pressure on their shoulders and little room for error. After dropping the second game at home, heading into Indiana meant they had to win at least one on the road, or face the nightmare scenario of going down 3-0 in the series. That kind of deficit? Almost impossible to come back from. And early on, it looked like that's exactly where they were headed. The Pacers came out with purpose, pushing the pace, attacking mismatches, and exposing every weak spot in New York's defense. Within minutes, they built a double-digit lead. By the time the second quarter was winding down, that lead had ballooned to 20. The Knicks looked lost, disconnected. Their rotations were a step late. Their switches weren't working, and on offense, they couldn't find a rhythm. But the real issue, the one quietly killing them, wasn't about effort. It was about fit. New York had shifted its starting lineup, inserting Mitchell Robinson for the first time all postseason. The idea made sense on paper. Get more size, better rim protection, and someone who could at least challenge Miles Turner in the pick and pop. Defensively, they were counting on being able to switch more cleanly with OG Anunoby and Robinson sharing the front court. But the trade-off was massive. With Robinson in the starting unit, Karl-Anthony Towns, often referred to as Cat, they slid to the floor. That meant guarding a quicker, more mobile player in Pascal Siakam. And with Brunson, as electric as he is on offense, also on the floor, the Knicks found themselves constantly playing damage control on defense. The Pacers attacked both of them relentlessly. If Brunson was on the ball, they hunted him. If Cat was in the action, they ran him through pick and roll after pick and roll. The Knicks tried pre-switching, scram switches, drops, even soft hedges. Nothing worked. Indiana had counters for every move. By the middle of the second quarter, it looked like the Knicks were just surviving possessions, not defending them. And when you're trying to survive in the playoffs, that usually means you're already in trouble. But then something happened. Something small. Something unplanned. Brunson picked up his fourth foul. Cat picked up his third. Suddenly, both were forced to the bench. And what followed was shocking. For the final 96 seconds of the second quarter, the Knicks rolled out. A lineup with neither of their star players, and in that short window, they looked different. Energized. Unified. For the first time all series, the defensive switches were crisp. The paint was protected. The ball movement improved. And Indiana, a team that had scored at will for most of the game, went completely silent. 0 points in 96 seconds. A 7-0 Knicks run. And just like that, the deficit shrunk to 13 at halftime. That sequence could have easily gone unnoticed. A quick burst, a lucky break, maybe the Pacers just cooled off, right? But what happened? In those 96 seconds would become the blueprint, and the turning point for everything that followed. This was no fluke. It was a preview of what this Knicks team could be when the right pieces were on the floor. But the question was, would they recognize it in time? Would Thibodeau see what was hiding in plain sight? The third quarter gave us the answer, and it wasn't pretty. The wrong direction coming out of halftime. Knicks fans held their breath. After that late second quarter spark, the momentum felt like it was shifting. Maybe the worst was over. Maybe that 7-0 run was the start of something. But when the third quarter began, the Knicks doubled down on the mistake. Tom Thibodeau stuck with the same starting lineup. Mitchell Robinson was back on the floor. Karl-Anthony Towns returned. And so did the same problems. Immediately, the Pacers smelled blood. They ran action after action right at Towns, They pulled Robinson out to the perimeter, where he was clearly uncomfortable. And Brunson, now playing careful with 4 fouls, couldn't provide help defense. The result? Indiana went on a 15-5 run to open the quarter. The lead ballooned to 22. And the Knicks' season, it felt like it was about to fall apart. In those painful minutes, the frustration on the Knicks' bench was visible. The rotations were slow. The communication broke down. And worst of all, the energy that had carried them through so much adversity this season was completely gone. This wasn't just a bad matchup, it was a chemistry problem. The pieces didn't fit. The floor spacing was off. The help defense never came in time. Indiana was just too fast, too fluid, too locked in. And the Knicks, still forcing a lineup that wasn't working, looked like they were headed for another blowout loss. But right when it felt like the season was slipping away, Thibodeau made a bold decision. He benched both Towns and Robinson again. This time, it wasn't foul trouble. It was something else. A recognition. A pivot. He turned to the lineup that had ended the first half. A smaller group, more versatile, more aggressive. And from the moment they stepped on the floor, everything changed. Suddenly, the Knicks were flying around on defense. They were switching with purpose, closing out. On shooters, helping and recovering like a team that had rediscovered its identity. On offense, things began to flow. There was more spacing, more movement. The ball didn't stick. And Jalen Brunson, playing through pain, foul trouble, and exhaustion, started cooking. Possession after possession, he pulled the Knicks back into the game. Step backs, floaters, mid-range daggers. He drew defenders and kicked it out to open shooters. And with every bucket, the noise inside Gainbridge Fieldhouse got quieter. The Pacers, once in full control, looked stunned. It wasn't just Brunson either. The entire team was feeding off that energy. Josh Hart was everywhere grabbing rebounds, diving for loose balls, making the kind of hustle plays that don't show up in the box score, but break an opponent's spirit. Dante DiVincenzo started heating up from 3. And Isaiah Hartenstein, who had been quietly dominant in his minutes, became a defensive anchor. He held the paint down, contested everything, at the rim, and played the kind of smart, selfless basketball that kept the Knicks' run alive. By the end of the third quarter, the 22-point deficit had nearly vanished. The Knicks had cut it to single digits. And for the first time since the opening tip, it felt like New York, not Indiana, was in control. But the most important part of that comeback wasn't just the score. It was the realization. The Knicks had found their lineup, their identity, the one combination of players that could survive defensively, space the floor offensively, and allow Brunson to take over without having to carry every possession alone. And it didn't include 2 of their biggest names. That fixed that single. Crucial adjustment wasn't about ego. It wasn't about star power. It was about what worked. Now the question was, could they ride it all the way to a win? The fourth quarter would give us the answer, and it would test everything they had left. The fourth quarter began with tension you could feel through the screen. The Knicks were still trailing, but only just. The crowd in Indiana, loud all night, had quieted. Something had shifted, and the Pacers knew it. What they didn't know was that the Knicks were about to unleash their most complete defensive quarter of the entire playoffs, and it started with a gamble one that didn't involve Jalen Brunson. Thibodeau left Brunson on the bench to open the fourth. Risky? Maybe, but necessary. The Knicks needed stops more than anything else, and they couldn't get them with both Brunson and Towns on the floor. So for the next few minutes, it was up to a unit led by Hart, McBride, Hartenstein, and OG Anunoby to hold the line. What happened next? It wasn't just good defense, it was lockdown, suffocating, elite-level playoff basketball. Every switch was sharp. Every rotation was early. Every closeout was disciplined. McBride hounded Indiana's ball handlers at the point of attack. OG and Hart walled off every drive. And Hartenstein. He anchored the paint like a veteran who'd been here 1,000 times. The Pacers couldn't get a clean look. Couldn't. create any advantage, and couldn't find a rhythm. In just a few minutes, the Knicks erased what was left of Indiana's lead. The Pacers went scoreless for nearly 3 minutes, and their frustration started to boil over. Haliburton began forcing shots. Miles Turner floated to the perimeter, unable to impact the paint. And every possession ended with either a contested jumper or a desperate heave at the buzzer. Then, as if scripted, the Knicks brought Brunson back in, and that's when everything clicked. With the game now close, and Indiana reeling, the Knicks didn't go back to their old habits. They didn't pair Brunson with Towns. They didn't overload the floor with size. They stuck with what had worked: versatile defenders, smart spacing, and one absolute killer at the point. Brunson didn't miss a beat. He started hunting switches, dragging bigger defenders into isolation, and dissecting them one by one. On one play, he crossed over, stepped back, and buried a 3 in rhythm. On the next, he used a screen to create a pocket of space, pulled up from mid-range, and cashed it. Every possession was a masterclass in patience, timing, and skill. The Pacers tried to answer. They brought Haliburton off high screens, ran Spain pick and rolls, even tried to get Brunson involved defensively to wear him down. But none of it worked. The Knicks were too sharp. They sent help at just the right time, cut off every driving lane, and forced Indiana into late clock prayers. It became clear that this wasn't just a hot stretch, it was domination. The Knicks were imposing their will, and as the final minutes ticked away, the confidence was written all over their faces. But what made this final stretch so powerful wasn't just that the Knicks were scoring, it was that the Pacers weren't. For nearly 10 full minutes in the fourth, Indiana managed just 16 points. That's not just good defense. That's season-saving, soul-crushing defense. And it all stemmed from one choice that rewrote the outcome of Game 3. Towns stayed on the bench. Brunson led the offense. And everyone else defended like their lives depended on it. No overreactions, no panic, just discipline, just trust. And as Brunson nailed a dagger with under a minute to go, the message was clear. The Knicks were not going down without a fight. Not in this building. Not with their season on the line. When the final buzzer sounded, the Knicks had completed one of the most improbable comebacks of the entire postseason. Down 20 points. On the road. In a hostile environment. They won by 6. But the scoreboard only told part of the story. Because the real victory was the fix they found. And the question now? Could this new formula take them even further? The fix becomes the formula. After that stunning Game 3 comeback, something changed not just in the scorebook, but in the locker room. The Knicks had found their identity again. And more importantly, they had found the fix that could carry them through the chaos of the playoffs. Thibodeau, known for his stubborn rotations and defensive obsession, did something that surprised everyone. He adjusted. He didn't just ride the momentum from Game 3, he leaned all the way into it. In Game 4, there was no hesitation. No return to the Towns experiment. No forcing size just for the sake of matchups. The Knicks doubled down on speed, versatility, and grit. Jalen Brunson led the charge again, but this time with the confidence of a man who knew the blueprint was in his hands. He wasn't just scoring, he was orchestrating, dictating every possession, controlling every pace shift. You could feel it, he wasn't reacting to the game anymore. He was running it. And behind him, that defensive unit. They were even better. Josh Hart, the heart and soul. Every possession he was diving for loose balls, crashing the glass, defending 2 guys at once. He played like someone who hadn't slept since Game 3 and still had enough energy to power all of Madison Square. Garden. OG Anunoby, the quiet killer, locked down Indiana's wings so tight that the Pacers had to completely rework their offensive sets. They tried running Haliburton off double screens, tried freeing him up with decoys and backdoor cuts. Nothing worked. OG was always there, in the right spot, at the right time. McBride, the smallest guy on the court, he played like a giant. Pressuring full court, denying passes, getting over screens like his life depended on it. He was the Knicks' chaos agent disrupting everything the Pacers wanted to do. And then there was Hartenstein. No blocks in the box score could capture what he meant to this defense. He rotated, he contested, he boxed out like it was Game 7 of the finals. Every shot at the rim was a test, and most of them failed. The Knicks didn't just win Game 4, they crushed Indiana's spirit. Every time the Pacers tried to build momentum, the Knicks responded with a stop. Every run was shut down. Every shot was met with resistance. It wasn't just strategy, it was will. But here's the thing. This fix wasn't just about defense. It changed the offense too. With Towns off the floor, the spacing opened up. The lanes were clearer. The ball moved faster. No more clogged paint. No more forced post touches. Instead, Brunson could attack freely, draw doubles, and kick it out to shooters in rhythm. Suddenly, Hart was getting open looks. OG was cutting, off ball with purpose. McBride became a reliable outlet in the corners. Even Hartenstein flashed surprising playmaking in the high post quick handoffs, smart screens, slick passes. Everything just clicked. The Knicks had become what they were. Always meant to be a fast, gritty, defensive-minded unit with a killer at the helm. They didn't overpower you with size. They overwhelmed you with effort, with execution, with belief. And what made it all work? That one change. Sitting Karl-Anthony Towns. The blockbuster mid-season addition, the all-star, the piece everyone thought was the missing puzzle turned out to be the decision that saved their season. It wasn't personal. It was necessary. Thibodeau didn't bench Towns to punish him. He did it because it gave the Knicks their best chance to win. And the results spoke louder than words ever could. 2 straight wins. Both fueled by the same formula. Brunson leading. The defense swarming. The team connected like never before. Fans could feel it. Analysts started to whisper it. The Knicks were no longer just surviving. They were threatening. This one brave, controversial, season-defining fix had become their identity. And now the only question was, could anyone stop it? By the time the Knicks returned to Madison Square Garden for Game 5, something had shifted not just on the court, but in the energy surrounding the team. The Garden wasn't just loud, it was alive. The kind of alive that only New York can deliver when its team dares to matter in the postseason. This wasn't just basketball anymore, it was belief. All eyes were on the Knicks. Could they keep it going? Could this sudden, defiant rise actually hold? The answer came fast. Jalen Brunson, once again, stepped into the spotlight like it was his birthright. From the opening tip, he hunted mismatches, baited defenders, and controlled every inch of hardwood like it belonged to him. Floaters, step-backs, drives all on target, all unstoppable. The Pacers threw everything at him. He made it look effortless. But what made the night unforgettable wasn't just Brunson's brilliance, it was how the team around him had evolved. That one fix, that bold move to bench Karl-Anthony Towns, had unlocked a version of the Knicks that few had dared to imagine. Every possession now pulsed with purpose. Every player knew their role, embraced it, and executed it with conviction. Josh Hart, still a man possessed. Another double-double. More hustle plays than you could count. He, though, played like he'd strapped New York on his back and dared anyone to knock it off. OG Anunoby, ice cold, calm, clinical. Another defensive masterclass. Stripping Halliburton, closing out on shooters, erasing space like a ghost. He didn't talk. He just made you disappear. McBride, a flamethrower in moments that mattered. No fear, just buckets. His emergence as a reliable two-way spark off the bench was no longer a surprise, it was expected. And then there was Hartenstein, the enforcer. He grabbed rebounds in traffic like his life depended on it, altered shots without fouling, and passed. Like a point guard when the offense stalled. The glue guy. The connector. This was no longer about surviving without Towns. This was about thriving because they had the courage to make that call. The Knicks had transformed their season, not by adding more, but by subtracting what didn't. Fit. The fix worked because it returned the team to its roots. Defense first, movement second, belief always. And it was contagious. Bench guys who hadn't seen meaningful minutes all series, they stayed ready, stayed locked in, because the culture had shifted. This wasn't about names or contracts anymore. It was about who gave them the best shot to win. Period. Thibodeau's gamble, the very one that could have unraveled everything, was now being praised as the turning point. The moment he stopped managing egos and started managing wins. And the fans, they saw it. They felt it. This wasn't just the same old Knicks story with a new chapter.